Hello and welcome to this presentation on BlueWorx Support Pack 11. I'm Craig Bennett and I'm the Product Development Manager for BlueWorx at ZAG. I'm joined today by Carl McGowan. A lot of you will know Carl. He's been involved in the major pre-sales engagements for BlueWorx and many of the projects. Welcome to Support Pack 11 release, Carl.
Hi, thanks. Looking forward to highlighting the latest features and functions from BlueWorx.
Okay, so this video is for our customers and partners who already have a reasonable working knowledge around BlueWorx. We're going to step through a few areas for this release, have a brief recap on what roadmaps are about, and we'll look at some asset history, functionality, quick filters, linear asset management, a lot of work that we've done in inspections, some work on notifications and orders, plant maintenance and time zones, some geospatial features, user profiles, and a revamp of our materials functionality. As we go through anything with a green section header, we'll do a demonstration on. So just to recap on the roadmap, we publish this updated roadmaps for each service pack sometime after the release of the previous one. And we work to include in those service packs those things assessed as being of priority need for the product and importantly for customers. And a lot of the input that we get comes from customers. Here's the list of what was published late last year around Support Pack 11, and as the color code indicates, with more surety of the top of the list and less at the bottom. And as we go through and as customers have real world requirements, we also add other features as we go. The first area that I'd like to talk about is on-demand asset history. So now when users are online, they will have the ability to view the history for a specific equipment or function location. It can show recent orders, notifications, inspections, and measurement readings. And then individual settings per user can control whether they can download the order and or notification to their device in a normal way. Anything that they download, for example, an order that's already been completed, will stay there until their next sync. But if they choose to download an open order that hasn't been completed but may not exist on any of their profiles, then that will stay on their device until either it's completed or a full sync occurs. Selection of the inspections goes to the inspection viewer and measurement points to the measurement point viewer that we delivered in the last release. So let's go take a look at that. So here we are in BlueWorx, master test equipment. And you'll notice there's a new button down here. So this appears when you're online. And this has given us a list that's configurable in terms of the numbers and time period. So what we're seeing here is a measurement reading, and we have some orders and notifications, and we can also have inspections as well. So I can filter on the list, for example, and look at orders. You can see quite a few of those are open. Here's one that was finished. And if we go and click on that, then that's going to download that on the fly from SAP to our device. So, Carl, any comments on that?
Yeah, really useful. And I think the key aspect that people need to be aware of is this is an online functionality. I know, Craig, you've mentioned it, but it is something that people do need to be aware of. That order is now available for offline use, but prior to actually getting it downloaded, looking at that timeline, that is an online only activity. But the main requirement I'm seeing from customers around this one is when they go to work on an asset, they really want to look at that history and answer questions like, is there already a defect out there, or have we seen this defect before? Is it a reoccurring defect? What did they do last time? Really important to those operators who are out there in the field to have that sort of information available to them. And always a difficult one for us to deliver in a purely offline solution because the huge volumes that if we take the whole lot offline, it's just not really practical. And this, I think, is a perfect in between. It's available when you're online, but while you're online, you can download what you need for use offline later on.
Yeah, all valid points, Carl. So we'll just switch back. So the next item talk about, it's a very small one, but it's a good example of where we're looking to make a better user experience. In the last release, we implemented across the board filters that you could save for orders, notifications, and maps. And now we've made it a little bit faster for you to be able to go and access those. So if I come into my work list here, You'll notice that the filter button down the bottom actually does a pop-up, and I can get directly to the filters that I've already saved. Quite a simple one. Any comments, Carl?
I think constantly improving the product like this, adding small bits of functionality makes a big difference to the users, and really thinking about those users in the field, making it as simple as possible for them.
The next area is around linear asset management. Now, this is a fairly complex topic, and there's a lot of functionality that SAP delivers, and also some challenges in some of the functionality that SAP has around linear asset management as well. What we're doing in this first release is what we think is a good start to enabling this optional SAP functionality, and customers can choose to enable it. What that's allowing you to do is to view the linear asset data in equipment and function locations. You can edit it, adopting from the equipment or function location for the notification and for work orders, and adopting and editing for confirmations. That's single confirmations, not multiple. And if in SAP you've configured measurement points to have linear data, then the measurement documents that you create will also have it. Let's go and take a look at that. Okay, I'm going to go into a piece of equipment to begin with that's linear managed. Pretty familiar in terms of an equipment screen, but now if it's a linear item, it has linear data maintained for it down here. The base, any markers, and the offsets. If I move up the structure list, I can see a function location that also has linear data, and that's in exactly the same position. If I create a notification for this item, then you can see there's linear data adopted, and I can go and change the start and end endpoints. In a similar way, if I go and create an order, create new, then the linear data has been adopted, in this case from the notification, since it was changed from the standard proposed by the function location. And now for the time confirmations, if I go into the operation itself, you can see that there is now linear data available in here as well. And the setup for that's pretty easy. You'll be doing more work in SAP. Once you've enabled linear asset management, it's just a single switch in the BlueWorx config. And so that's the confirmation. And if I came across to the measurement points area, and we've got some traffic counters set up here, and if I drilled into that, I can see that there's linear data. So Carl, any comments on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And Craig, you're quite right to say that this linear area is a relatively complex area in SAP. Very simple to enable in BlueWorx, but that's on the assumption you've got it set up and all working in your back-end system. If you don't currently use linear data, be aware that it is a project. So it is a project to implement linear asset management in SAP, and don't think it's because you've now got it in BlueWorx, it's going to be simple to do in SAP. So please be aware of that. And Craig, you also quite rightly pointed out, not everything that's supported in standard SAP linear asset management is currently available in BlueWorx. There is some functionality that you'll need to assess if you're using it, whether it's available in BlueWorx. We've implemented the core functionality, and it should be usable for the vast majority of our customers if you're using linear asset management. However, if you are using linear asset management extensively and are expecting to turn this on and just work out of the box, please make sure you get in contact with one of us, starting off with myself, or if you're in North America or Europe, with Quentin. Both of us are very experienced in implementing linear asset management and are happy to walk you through how the process works in BlueWorx, but also discuss what you've got set up in your SAP system. But it's a huge amount of work, and thanks, Craig, for delivering this in the product.
Yes, a lot of work for a short slide and a short demo. So the next area is one of the key focus areas for this release, and we've done a lot of work around inspection configuration. So the end users aren't going to see much, but administrators are going to really appreciate some of the stuff that we've done, I think. So the first thing is that we've actually moved the inspection administration application, all the code for it, out and into a new application. You won't notice any difference, but it just means that we can more precisely target updates to that as a separate application. And it also means that the BlueWorx admin app opens a little bit faster because we sped up some things in there as well. For all the major items that we have in the inspection area, we now have an internal ID where we'll on save apply a GUID, or on upload you can apply your own unique ID. And what that means is that you can now go and change the visible ID of an inspection as you like, without impacting its actual identity value. We're now using the maintenance plant as an option to control inspections. That is the generation in SAP and on the app. So that means that you can have different inspections that come into play for different maintenance plants. A big area that we've put in is that you can optionally now turn on inspection maintenance authorization groups. So this is quite an advance. This is directly from customer feedback where they, especially in larger companies and multinationals, they want to have different people in charge of different aspects of the inspection process. So you might have somebody, for example, that controls safety-related questions, or you might have somebody on fleet and another one maintaining another area. You could have it geographical, many different ways you can slice it. We're not dictating that. We've made it as flexible as possible and allowing you to link out to create your own authorization groups and link those through to SAP authorization objects that you create. I'll just move through talking about these before we go and demo them all. So we've improved the visibility and editing of inspections. So you'll now see that we have a tree control that allows you to see the structure of the inspections, including any rule influences. You can drag and drop now to reorder the question groups within an inspection, and just a vastly improved user experience for the administrators. Based upon customer request, you can now use rules to hide entire groups of questions, or to show or hide entire groups, so you don't have to individually hide a whole heap of questions. You can just do it at the group level. And we've introduced the ability to use measurement point code group response in inspection rule conditions. So when you've used a measurement point to create a response as a question, we can now interrogate that to allow you to further control and rule conditions. You can now navigate to equipment and function location from the inspection title, just a very small request that came through from a customer. The inspection viewer will now show if there's a comment or document attached to a response in the list views. And we're allowing for optional text field in the question for measurement reading responses. We've also included the ability to mark inspections as being available to do an ad hoc inspection. So if you mark it as being available for ad hoc, you can use it against anything you choose without restriction. And finally, we've included a new control reference field in the inspection template and inspection questions. So that allows you, if you've got engineering control references or regulatory references, to make a text entry, and then that will be copied down to both the inspection itself reference and the question reference will be copied down into the inspection question results. So at a later stage, if you're performing an audit, you can say that that question or the composition of that question was with respect to a particular, if you like, release version on an engineering control authority or a safety authority, whatever the case may be. Okay, that's a fair bit. So let's show you how that all looks. Come back over and I'll come into our administration area. So access to the inspection area is still the same. Now let's go and have a look at the inspections. And we can now see that there is a plant field that's available for you to go and use that. Now, if we have authorization objects on, then that will necessarily limit what values you can put in the plant depending on the authorization object itself, which is a good way for me to show you how that's set up. I'll just back out to the main admin area. Go into core settings. Go to inspections. And there's a new switch here to activate this. Now this switch is only available if you've got authorization switched on for the whole of admin, since it doesn't make any sense to have everybody allowed to edit this and then expect authorizations to actually work at the inspection level. So when this is on, you get the values down below. You can provide a description for that. You link it to an SAP authorization object that you have your security team make, and then you can limit what plants can be applied in that objects list that I was just discussing. So in other words, this safety group, they can make inspections or inspection questions that could be used in any plant. This inspection testing group could only use it in an object list of 1,000, 1,010 and 3,000. And you can also, if you want to, limit which object types you can use in an authorization group. So if you had, say, one plant and you wanted one person in charge of all the fleet inspections, then you could put the object types for the fleet objects and another one for the other asset types that you wanted, and allow them to control their own space. Now the key thing is that you can still construct inspections using data from another authorization group. You just can't go and edit them. So you can have a safety inspection group that everyone can apply, for your intro safety steps, but it just means that only those with the safety authorization, if that's an example you want to use, can actually edit those questions. It's probably a good time to hear from you on that one, Carl.
Okay, thanks, Craig. This is absolutely has come from customer request, and it's really applying to these larger customers that are starting to use BlueWorx, where they have separate parts of their business looking after separate areas. Oil and gas companies in North America who have a liquids and a gas business that are very different, or a power generation business that are very different. Customers in the mining industry who have, Craig's pointed out, that have owners of fleet, owners of safety, and then owners of the rest of the asset management objects. We see this being used quite a lot in those large companies, and it's critical for them to maintain the integrity of their data. They see a lot of these inspection questions as life critical, in terms of if you haven't correctly inspected life-saving assets or objects like brakes and protection rails, then that's a critical item to them, and they do need to control this access. So that's what it's for, and looks really good, and it's exactly what we'll be using at some of these customers.
Excellent. So I'll just go through and we'll have a look at some of the other inspection-related updates as well. Quite a big long list, so let's go and have a look at some of those now. So here's an inspection. So in no particular order, I'll go through. So this is, with this on, I won't be able to save this without actually maintaining an authorization control group. So I can come in and go and select the test group now and apply it. So now anyone with the authorization for inspection test group can go maintain this. Here's the control reference field, so that's your free-form field for you to be able to put engineering controls in. And here's the switch for ad hoc use. So if I switch this on, you could use this inspection for any function location or equipment. Wouldn't make sense in this case, but it is a very simple, very powerful switch. So let's go and have a look at the improved layout. So the first thing you notice is a tree control here, and I can go through and I can see all the questions that are involved. I can see what they're actually doing, whether they're updating characteristics or in this case no action. And if there's a rule that's being applied either as a condition or as an action, then that applies. So I can see from here that the response to this question, the construction type, is going to evaluate this rule, and it's going to impact on the requirement for the response down here. Any comments on that one, Carl?
No, it looks fantastic, and it's just going to make maintenance that much easier for those people who are dealing with very complex inspections and rules processes. It's going to be a lot less clicking and a lot less moving between the screens to see everything you need.
And the other thing that may have been missed is that there's a new screen here. And what this allows you to do is see all of the object configuration and to be able to search on that. So you can, for example, go and see every inspection that's been set up for a given technical object type or characteristic or whatever else. So it really allows you to see if you've got any holes or what's active in terms of your configuration around inspections. In terms of the rules, we come into rule and have a look at hole conditional steel. Come into here. Not too much of a change here, but in terms of the action, this is where I'm talking about. You can now have an action that actually runs to hide or show an entire group of questions. So in this case, the condition for this rule is to assess the material that the hole is constructed from and evaluate whether it's steel. Because the action is, if it's steel, then don't ask all of the questions related to wooden poles. This, down the bottom, is the legacy way as to how you would do this. I just left it in there so you can see that instead of having to set this up to hide every single one, you can just hide the whole question group if you've gone and set it up that way. Yeah, any comment on that, Carl?
Yeah, I was looking at this and thinking we're not going to give any prizes to guess who asked for this functionality. Our friends in the utilities industries have some relatively complex questions around things like poles, transformers, lines, and critical to them have a relatively small number of very complex inspections, and this is going to make their rules so much simpler and easier to maintain and way more powerful. So I've got a number of customers very excited to see this, and I suspect some of you watching this will know exactly who you are.
So if I just skip back over now and I'll just go into any old asset. Here we go. This asset, come into inspections, and I can now go and add an inspection. So this is for the ad hoc. And here's two inspections that I'd set up. So that's it. It's as simple as that. I've now gone and added the inspection to the list.
Yeah, and this is really powerful. For those of you who don't understand, the real use of this one, it came out of some customers, and a particular customer in North America, and then a whole lot of other customers have asked for the same thing. And if I give you the example, you can imagine you're a gas company. One of the things you need to do is whenever you do any work, it doesn't matter what asset you're working on, if you release gas into the atmosphere, you need to record how much gas, and that's a regulatory requirement. So if you don't do it, you're going to be put out of business. So any job, under any circumstances, under any asset, may result in some gases being vented to the atmosphere. And in this case here, they will be using this sort of functionality for them to be able to record an inspection to say, yes, I vented some gas and it's gone to the atmosphere. Very similar things in the utilities industry where they're recording impacts on customers, or if they want to get a customer land access, some of those sorts of things. They won't necessarily know in advance if they need to access someone's private property. They can create an inspection, gather that information about accessing the private property and the items involved in it. I think there's hundreds of possibilities of use for this functionality. It looks nice and simple, but it's usually beneficial to lots of different circumstances, and I can see this applying in every single industry. So we're excited about this one.
Excellent. So I'll carry on. I'm just going to go in now to that reference functionality. So if I go back to a wooden pole inspection we saw before, and we can see that there's this control reference. I pop back over and have a look at an inspection that's been undertaken. One of these items, wooden pole. Go and have a look at the inspection history. have a look at the question detail, and in configuration, we have the engineering control reference that's come through from the inspection header. If I had a control reference at the question level, then that would also come through here. So it's just tying it in quite nicely to regulatory authorities, etc. Okay, so next topic. Just talk through some of these. So a notification and order improvements. So we've made changes to the sync process that has the result of speeding up the order and notification syncs. It's to determine the list. We're still using the SAP BAPIs to actually get the detail. So we preserve the existing logic there and also the authorization checks from standard SAP. The order object save now uses the BlueWorx transactional framework, so that now appears in the administration application transactional logs. The user status now shown for notifications created in BlueWorx but not yet synced. And we also now prevent the order completion status from activating if there is a confirmation for that order in the outbox. So that was a position where if you were online or on the web, it would automatically talk to SAP and complete the order. And that had some problems for some customers with the confirmations that were still sitting in the outbox when they were tried to be processed. So the next major area, which has a seemingly small visual impact, but is actually quite large in terms of the functionality that we've had to do, is that we now support SAP time zones. So where you have that activated for plant maintenance in SAP, we can now correctly show and edit the dates for the user's time zone. That is in line with what SAP does. So it applies to orders, confirmations, notification, measurement points and documents, equipment and function locations. So we'll go and have a little look at that. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that when I go into something and have a look at, for example, an order, drill into that, then I've got a little thing up here. This is showing that I'm in New Zealand Standard Time at the moment. Configuration can control where that gets set from. So the options are that you can have it specified by your SAP set time zone for the user. It can be from your device time zone as sensed, like if you're on a mobile unit and you're transitioning time zones, it'll automatically set it. Or the users can select it themselves. So that's what I'm going to go through and do right now. And I'm going to go and change it from not my SAP time zone, but to a selected time zone. And I'll change it to Hawaii. Who wouldn't want to be in Hawaii? So now when I back out, go back into my order, I can see, or my order list and order, I can see I'm in Hawaii time, and the start and end dates will be adjusted for all of those. Similar thing for any of those other objects that I talked about. So quite small in terms of the visual impact, quite large in terms of not just multinationals, but anyone that has multiple time zones. Any comment on that, Carl?
Yeah. So once again, this is a customer request. We've got a specific customer that is critically managing these time zones. Important for some of the regulatory processes where you're required to record when exactly and what date you did some of the maintenance activities. So this will be available for those customers, and we should see this one used fairly quickly as it is a requirement for some of our key customers.
Excellent. Okay, just talking through a little bit around the Geospatial. So we've made some consistency improvements around the map administration. So again, administrators will be happy there. Another request from a user that when end users are completing the drawing of a point feature, it automatically saves it. So you don't have to focus on the point and then click save. Small things, they matter. We've improved the performance for determining nearby orders and assets, and improved the usability of filtered assets on the map. So we're now, related to this, limiting the number of results to 1,000 objects, which is quite a lot. And if there's more than that that's available, then we warn the user to give them the option to navigate to the map without passing any assets, so that they can then apply better filters to more precisely define what assets they want to see. So in the area of user profiles, another customer request, there's now a per profile switch so that you can use the scheduled start and end date instead of the basic start and end date as the date criteria. And there's a new option for the user profile job that you can just do the add additional instead of regenerating the whole profile. So I'll quickly go and show you that. So here we are in a profile. The dates to filter work on. There's a new switch there. The standard is basic start and end, but you can have scheduled start and end as well. And we've included the new option to run the job instead of doing a full refresh, just to add any new entries. And now it gives you a little warning so that you understand the consequences of running this.
And this is great, and it seems like a fairly minor thing, doesn't it, Craig? Just adding the ability to do this. You could always do it if you ran a background job, and if you had access to SE38, some of those sorts of transactions to refresh it with either a full or just an add. But what we're finding is a lot of customers in these situations, the people that want to run these don't actually have access to run some of these batch jobs in some of the systems, and especially in the productive system. And having the button here enables people to still run these and refresh their profiles without having to make a request to the basis team to run the jobs for you.
Yep, spot on, Carl. Exactly what some of the customers asked for. Okay, so the final area is around the materials functionality. The first thing that we've done of a minor consequence is that the material logs are now added to our BlueWorx transactional framework, so you can see those working through as well. But the really big area is the redesign and the inclusion of being able to do online searching. So that means that desktop, as I am at the moment, it won't download any materials from SAP on sync because you can search online for them. And on a mobile device, you could still download those materials that are necessary for when you're offline. But if you have got a connection, then you can, and it's been configured, then you can go and search straight from SAP. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the materials profiles. If I go into core settings, into materials, these are the material types that I can use for online searching. And then it's also controlled from the material profile itself. So if I draw back into one of these, go into a profile, I can see there's an online search. And what this is saying is I can search in this profile in Plant 1000. So materials that are in Plant 1000. So let's go and have a look at some of this in action. Come back over to the main application, into assets and measures. You're going to get to the same place from orders, for example. Have a look at materials and you can immediately see that the screen is a little bit different. The side panel will be what's displayed to begin with if you're on something like a phone. It has a search criteria and also has the ability to favorite items. So if I choose something that I've previously done, I can filter on groups if I want to. That is material groups. That's new functionality. You'll see that the online searching has been switched on because I'm on a desktop browser here. And there's a requirement to select a plant that can default through from your SAP profiles. I search on that. Here's my items, drill into it, and I'm seeing that I have 61 of these in stock. And I can also see history of issues on that as well. Come back over again. If I now want to go and order or issue one of these, then a new dialog is displayed. Much of the information is as it was before, but there are a few improvements to it as well. So in this case, I have stock of this. I could issue it or do a reservation if I'm allowed to. Of according to my user profile, and I fill in the expected field, as you can see on the screen. And down the bottom here is the ability, as I mentioned, to actually favorite this item so that you can come back to your commonly used parts quite quickly. If I just back out a little bit though and take that away and search for non, and I've got something set up for some non-stock items. So this is completely new. So I've got spring, and it's immediately saying, well, this is non-stock. You can only be doing a requisition, fill in the order and the operation, price, etc., and send that through to the back end. Okay, any comments on that, Carl?
Yeah, this is fantastic. So I think the key point that we need to make sure people are aware here, this does not mean that the existing materials functionality doesn't work offline. You still have the same functionality offline. This is functionality in addition to the offline functionality, so that if you're online, you can access more data, or you don't necessarily need to take the amount of data offline with you, because there's some things you would only ever use if you're online. Also applies to a lot of these organisations where they're more of a manufacturing organisation and you're in a plant where you've got extensive coverage as well. So if the material you're going to grab is in the store, then if you're in the store, you're going to have connectivity, because the stores typically have connectivity. So it's also supporting that process as well. And looks fantastic. Thank you, Craig.
Okay, well, that about wraps up what we had to share for Support Pack 11. There's a lot that's gone in behind this around the linear asset management, the time zones, the materials refresh, and the vast improvement to the inspection administration and control with those authorization groups. So thank you for watching, and I hope that you can see some value from this. As I highlighted throughout, a lot of this has come from specific customer requests, and that's always good to see, because we know we're adding value when you're asking for it. Just like to acknowledge that this is all built on SAP, and it's our foundation with some pretty awesome capabilities from Neptune software that allows us to mobilize this easily for you. So last word is yours, Carl.
Thanks. Yeah, and what I really want to finish with, if you've made it this far in the video, congratulations, well done, and thank you. If I can ask you to do anything, is please keep your ideas coming to us. Like Craig said, these ideas come from you, and these are the best ideas that are coming through, and the most important ones, and the ones that affect the most users. We really do read every single request, and we will respond to you if you're asking for new functionality to the solution. We can't promise you that everything you'll ask for will get included in the product, but what we can promise you is that we will read it, and we will seriously consider it, and we will get back to you one way or the other. And some of the best ideas we have in the product come from the users, and we just want that to continue. Nothing's more important to us than that feedback, so please keep it coming.
Excellent. Thanks, Carl. See you on the next support pack, everyone. Bye.